Hi, so this is a quick demo of a drag and drop page builder that I'm developing in Laravel. I'm using Laravel and Vuejs. So you can see here, it's just using the standard starter kit here. But you can actually port this into any other Vue application you want. I mean, a lot of the functionality is done in Vue, and so you can basically port this over. I may actually create a Nox version after this, but I just wanted to get the concept going with Laravel to start with. So here it starts with creating layouts, and layouts are then linked to pages. So when you create a page, you have to link it to a layout, and then you can create menus that also get used in your layouts or in your pages. And I'm going to demonstrate each of these functionalities. So for now, we just have this one layout, right? We have a layout called the default layout, and we have menu here because we are going to be using the menu in our layout. I prefer to create the menu first, so it's very easy to create a menu, just the name of the menu. And once you click on that menu, you can then reorganize the items on the menu. In this case, we have our menu here. We can link pages and we can drag things around very easily. You can make things become children of other things, and you can nest these to as many levels as you want. You can actually link an item to a page, or you can link it to a custom link, okay? So let's assume that we already have homepage here, but assume that you wanted to have homepage again under another link. You just put it in there, and now you can customize what you want it to look like. So here we can just say events, if you wanted that to be an event, and then you can select how you want it to be targeted, serve, or on a new window. Now, once you create a menu, the next thing is to use the menu in a layout, okay? You can use menus in pages if you want, but I prefer to use it in a layout, so the layout then gets shared between all the other pages. Now, this is a layout that I've created, and if you just go into editing the layout, then you see what it looks like. The menu is what we created here, and if you highlight the menu and go to content, you can select which menu you want to show there. I know for sure that the secondary menu doesn't have anything yet. So if I select that, all those links disappear because I haven't added any children or any items to the secondary menu. But if I go back to the main menu, the menu is displayed on the layout. You can interact with the menu. You can edit the properties of the menu, like you can set the colors of the links. In this case, you can set what the color should be and what the hover color should be. So if I hover, it says blue. If I change this and say if I hover, I want it to be red, then I just need to do that, and I hover here, and now it becomes red, okay? You can change the font size of the menu items, and you can also configure the drop-down menu, okay? So the drop-down is what you see here. You can configure what the background should be, what the link color should be, and what the font size of the drop-down should be. So these are all configurable here in the sidebar. You can also configure the logo. We've built in a media manager that allows you to customize pictures or to upload pictures and use them in the application. So you can directly paste the link of your logo here if the logo is coming from an external source, or you can pick it from the list here from your media manager. So in this case, I have it here, but if I didn't have it, I could directly upload a logo here. So this is the logo I'm using, so I'm just going to pick that, and then that gets loaded in here. You can set the height, the width, and everything that you expect to get, and you can decide to hide the logo entirely, okay? If you didn't want a logo entirely, you can hide it. Now, you can also customize the mobile version of this menu, okay? So right now, we are viewing it on the desktop mode. If I go to the mobile mode, then you see that it gets displayed with the links and a flyover or a slide over with all the links that we have on that page also showing up in the slide over. So you can switch this around, and again with the mobile mode, you can customize whether you want it to slide out from the right or from the left. You can set the background color, the links color, and the font sizes as well. Again, this is just a layout. I have a footer here and I have a header. When you start using this layout, all the content will be injected into this space where it says page content will go here. So you can build your layout around this page content block, and then when you start using this layout, which I'm going to show you later on, you're going to see that the content then gets injected here and the layout becomes static. Of course, you can change different aspects of the items that you highlight here. This is the footer. You can do the styling, change the background, You can do the borders and all of that stuff. It has a ton of features that you can actually customize here. Now that is the layout. So once you build your layout, you go back and you can use the layout in a page. So if I go to create a page here, it's going to ask me what layout I want to use. Enter the page name and the page layout that you want to use. And once it's created, like I have these, you can go ahead and modify your page. So let's start with modifying the home page. This is one that I've pre-built, and you see it has all the animations, and the animations are all configurable. Okay. Now, because the menu here, the navigation here, and the footer were all parts of the layout, you cannot edit it from within the page. You have to go and edit it in the layout, and that's the whole point of it, right? Because this gets shared across different pages. And so if you create a layout, the items here you can interact with them, but you cannot edit them from within the page. You have to go and do it in the layout edit mode. But you can build your content around this layout. Okay, I have just a hero section here. I have the text content, and these are all components or elements that are on this block. Okay, so you have a list of components here which you can drag and drop onto the page. For instance, if I wanted to add a block here, I can just say, okay, I want, let's say I want another div here below this, and that's a flex box. Okay, so with flex boxes, you have different customizations or different settings that you can choose. You can choose the justification, how to align the items, the gaps between the columns and the rows, and the wrapping and all of that stuff. You can also just say, I don't want to show this at all, make it invisible. And this is really useful if you want to hide it on a particular device. So right now it's visible on desktop. So let's just assume that I set the background of this div to red. You just need to come and choose the color here. So let's assume that we set it to red. You can, of course, also set it to an image if you wanted to. You can just pick an image here, and that image would become the background, but I didn't want an image, I just want the color. So let's assume I set it to red, and I want it to only display on desktop. So I would come here in the display mode on desktop, it's set to flex. But then if I switch this and I go to mobile, I can go down and I set the display property of that div to none. So now it's no longer showing on the mobile device, but if I switch back to desktop, it's there. So this is, you can build pretty much any responsive layout you want here. Now, because you are in a flex box, you have all these options that you can choose from. You can also choose from the sizing, which means you can set the height, the width, the max height and max width, or you can just drag here to increase the height. You don't have to set it here. If you want, you can just drag it here and set the height. So that's up to you. And as you drag it here, you see that it also does update here. So we keep everything in sync, and that's just the power of Vue.js. You can set the positioning, whether it's the Z index and all of that. And the spacing, the padding. So if I wanted to do the padding here, I can do it, and the margins. And so we can link all of these. And if I just say I want 50, a margin of 50, then you see that it gets padded. And if you want an auto margin, you can actually put a custom value and just type auto, and that gets synced over. So that's the whole point. You can do the same with padding. Now for styles, you said we already talked about background. You can do the borders, which includes the width of the border, the colors. Let's just assume that you want a border width of 20 pixels. So 20, I'll set that to 20. And then here, I'm just going to pick a color. Okay, that looks horrible, I know, but just to illustrate the point. You can also, of course, set the border radius. Let's say I want to set it to 10%. Then it goes to 10%, or you want to set it in pixels, then you just change the units here to pixels or whatever units you want. Here you can also put in the animations, and here we're using animate CSS that allows you to animate how the item enters the page. So we're setting it to any of these animations. We basically have all the entrance animations that are currently in animate CSS. So you can say I want it to zoom out and set the duration, the repeat, and all of that stuff here. Now, besides the animation, you also have transformation. So if you wanted to rotate this block, you can rotate it, and you can scale it down, scale it up, or you can do transitions. You can set what the transition should be. In this case, we're just going with linear transition, and that would affect the transitions on hover, for instance. So if you wanted to hover on this item. Now, talking about hovering, you can change the state here. So all the settings that we've had here apply to the default state, right? We haven't set any hover state yet. But if you wanted to change the background color on hover, for instance, then you can just come here and say, okay, on hover, I want the background color to be, let's say, green, for instance. And now you see this X here, it shows you that the style for this, the color style on hover is different from the color style on default. So if I go to default, the color is red, and if I go to hover, then the color is green. And how do I know that? If I go here and I hover over this, then you see that the hover color changes. So we are managing the responsive layout, but we are also managing the state of the items, of the elements on the page. Now you can also just right click on an element and say delete, okay? And that element is deleted from the page. You can also just click on it and you press the delete the action buttons here, so you can delete the element right on the page itself. You can duplicate elements. So if I added a new flex box here, I'm just going to color this and make it a background. Let's try a gradient background this time. And let's say it starts from red and it goes down to, let's say, green. I'm choosing ridiculous colors here, guys, but this is just to illustrate the point. Now, if I have this, I can choose to duplicate this element. So by just right clicking on it and clicking duplicate, now I have a new element that's a copy of that one, okay? And you can manipulate this one independently. So if I wanted to set this one to a different background color, I can do that, okay? So this is all different. Now you can also copy an element and paste in another element. So if I copy this, I can paste it inside of this div, and now this becomes a child of the previous element. Now you see it's a little difficult to tell that this is on top of another flex box, right? To manage that, I've created layers. So you can look at the structure of the page here and interact with the elements directly from the structure. So if I click here, you see this is highlighting the outer div, this is highlighting the inner div, and that's highlighting the parent as well. Now you can move things around. If I wanted to move this out of this box and put it in a different box, for instance, I can move it here, place it here, and now that becomes a different box. If I move it inside, I can just put it on top, and that becomes a child of that element, of that flex box. So you can interact with elements on this tree the same way you would interact with the elements on the page. If I right click, and can also just delete that element from there, or delete it from here, and that goes away, okay? So you can move around, you can play around with this. I find this structure or the tree here quite useful, because it's very easy to get lost when you're building a huge website and you have tons of components that are nested inside of each other. Now, the elements you can provide names to them. So here it just says grid, right? But what's this grid for? I have no idea. So you can actually give a name to that grid. You can just come here and say manager outline or manager message, and that becomes a name, and that name will also show up in the tree here. So when you're in the tree, you can know exactly what that element is and what you're looking at. Now, as far as the text goes, the typography here, you can drag in. Actually, let me just go and drop another flex box here. And in the flex box, I'm just going to drop, let's say, a heading. And let me make the flex items display in the center so it's easier to see. And I'm going to just make it flow as columns. And now in the headings, you can customize the content of the heading. So I'm just say demo heading, for instance. You can set the tag for this. And then you can set the opacity, of course, just like for every other element. You can set the opacity, the visibility, and you want the display, whether you want it to be displayed or not. Now, if I come to typography, because this is a heading, you can change almost anything here. You can change the color of the text. So if I take red, that changes to red. You can center the text. Of course, this is displayed as inline. so centering it doesn't make much of a difference in this case. You can add a text shadow. Now let's do the font size first. So in typography here, you can increase the font size of the text. You can change the line height and the units, the letter spacing. You can choose the font family. Okay, that's very important, right? So you can choose what font family you want to use here. And these are preloaded fonts that I took from Google Fonts. But technically you can add your own fonts if you want. But I have about 200 fonts that you can pick from here. So you can pick the font. And let's just say I want to go with Pacifico font. But you can capitalize fonts. In this case, this font doesn't accept capitalization very much. You can capitalize fonts, so you see that's an uppercase. You can transform everything to lowercase. You can transform everything to uppercase, which looks really ugly. You can also change the variant. Okay, so you want the unicaps, or you want all caps, so small caps. You can change the variants. You can change the font style, whether you want it italicized or not, and the decoration, you want it underlined or not, and the stroke of the font. So you can add a stroke to the font if you want. I don't know why you would do that, but you can add a stroke to the font if you want. And let's say you added a stroke of 1 pixel to the font. You can do that if you wanted to. But in this case, I really don't want to do that. I can clear the color here and just set it back to transparent. You can add the shadows, right? So here, if I wanted to add a horizontal shadow, I just go here and add a horizontal shadow. Set the color of the shadow. Let's assume I want a green shadow. I'll set the color of the shadow here. And the vertical distance of the shadow, the blurredness. So you can customize all of that here because that is typography. Again, we're talking about borders. You can change the borders if you want. We already looked at that. You can change the spacing, so the margins and the padding. If I wanted to get a padding of 10 around this element, I just put 10 there, and you can pick what unit you want it to be in. And the animations, so this doesn't have any animation for now. So I can come here and I say I want a fade up, for instance, and that would animate. And let's say I want it to repeat infinitely. So that will keep doing that, right? That will keep doing that. But let's just say I want to do it once, which is the default. And the delay, if you wanted to wait a few seconds before it animates, then you can do that. So let's say it waits a few seconds and then it comes in. Okay, so you can change the animation for each element, and this pretty much applies to any element you want on the page. We already talked about rotating elements. I know a big one is having to zoom in on elements on hover, right? So let's say if you hover over the element, I want to zoom in a little bit, right? So that would have the effect. Hover, you zoom in, hover, zoom in, and you're out, you zoom out. So you have this really nice little effect that you can apply to your elements on the page. Let's talk about paragraphs. So paragraphs, I've implemented a WYSIWYG editor. If you wanted to edit the paragraph text here, all you have to do is double click on it, and you can directly set it to bold. You can set it to strike through. You can edit the underlines. So this is irrespective of what you choose in the typography here. So you can override some of the general styles with more specific inline styles by just clicking on the element or on the text and setting some of the CSS properties for it. You can change the color of a text here. So if I wanted that to be red, I can just go there and change to red. And because that is red, if I double click on it, that shows up as red. If I double click here, it shows up as black. So you can also do all of this here in the side panel. If you don't want to do it on the page itself, you can come to the side panel and make the changes that you want here. You can edit the text here. And as you edit the text, it also will display on the page here itself. Okay, this is more. We have links. So this is just a normal link that allows you to link to external URLs or to link to an internal page. In this case, I'm linking to an internal page, the About Us page. But you can also choose to link it to an external URL, and you paste the URL here. Of course, you can change the text of the link here as well if you want to. We have history mode, so if you move things around, you can undo and redo things if you need to. But once you're in here, you can actually see a list of all the pages that you've created, and you can create new pages right from within your editor. You can switch between pages. I haven't built the other pages yet because this was just a demo, but you can switch and start editing other pages in here if you want to. So if you come here, you can also switch to edit layouts, because like I mentioned before, you cannot edit a layout if you're inside of a page, right? You have to go to the layout editor. But to prevent you from having to go to the dashboard and then go back to the layout to edit, you have a list of all your layouts here, and you can directly go here and edit that layout. So here it says proudly outdoors. Let's just say I put a question mark here. I save that, and then I go back to my page. You'll see that that gets reflected in all the pages that are using that layout. So you have that question mark here. If I go to the About Us page, which is using the same layout, that also gets reflected. So the layouts are quite useful because it prevents you from having to manually copy content over, or if you wanted to make a change to your menu, you don't have to go to a million pages to do it. You can do it directly from here. This is a demo that I was playing with, and I just built it myself using this tool. It took me less than a couple of minutes to put up this page. By the way, this is a background image for that container, and if I go here, the image, like we mentioned before, is coming from my media manager. So I can remove that image if I wanted to, and I can choose a different one from the media manager. If I wanted to use this one instead, I can do that. But I quite like the other image better. And because you have the image here, you can set how it's displayed. You can say, hey, get content in that div, or get covered, or just an auto layout. I usually prefer cover, and then I would set how I want it to be positioned here. Now, because we want things to be as flexible as possible, I also provided a way for you to do custom styles. Okay. For one thing, if you look at an element here, each element has a unique ID, and this ID gets populated on that element in the DOM. Okay, so you can directly target this ID in your custom CSS and provide it with some styling. So if I came to custom CSS and I just set ID of that, and I say background red, that turns the whole block into red, right? Because I'm targeting that ID. If I wanted to do something else, apply a different class, for instance, I can just say, let me assume a class of, let me assume I wanted to add a class of example. And here I can just target the example class, and that will still have the same effect. So you can have multiple classes here. You can customize things further with your own CSS right in here. And if I save that, that gets persisted. So even if I refresh this page, that is still loaded in there and it's part of that page. Now to see it in preview mode, this is in edit mode. To see it in preview mode, you just have to hide the sidebar, and you would see how the site would look like if you were to host it out there. So I know the obvious question now is, how do I get my hands on this drag and drop builder? Well, the current status is that it's still work in progress, and I'm giving myself the next few weeks to get it to a stage where I can actually give people to start using it. But if you look at the description below, there's a link to my website where you can actually put in your email and get on the wait list for me to let you know when the script is available. The plan for me right now is to make it available to at least 50 people when it's initially released at a really discount rate. And once that is done, once I get the first few 50 people who are using it or who are actually playing with it, then the price will be adjusted to reflect the work and the effort that I've put into developing it. So if you really want to get your hands on the script when it's released in the next few weeks, go to my website. The link is on screen here, and it's in the description below. Put in your email address, and just rest assured I'm going to contact you and let you know when it's available for purchase. Again, the first 50 people, my plan is to give them at a really giveaway discount price so that they can start playing with it. And if you are comfortable working with Laravel and with Vue.js, whether it's inertia or a standalone Vue application, you will be very comfortable using this script, because I haven't changed anything as far as Laravel is concerned. So it's very easy for you. If you look at the script, look at the way I've handled the current implementation, it will be very easy for you to be able to build your own components. But I'm also planning on adding more components as time goes. So for now, we have a few components. We have just these few components to start with, and we have the navigation viewer. But my plan is to add as many components as possible and as many blocks as possible. Things like accordions and pills and user cards and things like that. My plan is that I will continue to build on this and to add those components to it. Again, it's a multi-site builder, which means that you should be able to, in the end, build multiple websites on the same Laravel installation, which will allow you to host those websites on a subdomain, because we are using Laravel subdomain routing. So don't forget to go to the description below, click on the link there, it will take you to my site, and you just put your email address on the wish list, and you can be one of the first 50 people to get your hands on it before we actually price it at the price that we think that it should be going for. So thank you very much for watching.